Chilly here with Sirius Dallas Moon, and we are continuing with March astrology. Venus hour. Venus is 19 degrees Aquarius, and we're approaching the full moon in Aquarius, which is kind of a great time to see with clarity something to do also with astrology. So previously, I stopped at March 19, and we had the new moon in Pisces, Mercury going direct the day after, Sun conjoining Neptune, and then Saturn, March 22 and then 25, and then Venus conjoining Chiron before she enters Taurus. So, one eclipse that is giving me too on crusade mode. Okay, because Lilith is 8 degrees Sagittarius, and then a new moon in Pisces, March 19, which gives us with Mercury. Mercury, and I said that 8 degree Pisces is a hot spot, which is where I stopped. So we're going to have the eclipse with the Rahu and Ketu in 8 degree, and then Mars going through 8 degree Pisces, conjoining Rahu, and then Mercury turning direct at 8 degrees Pisces with Rahu, and we're going to also have a new moon, but with Mercury retrograde. Okay, so 8 degrees Pisces is a really hot spot, and it's not too far from Fomalhaut, ruled by Jupiter that goes direct at 15 degrees Cancer, with Mercury ruling over Ketu. Okay, there is just something where that degree, which is a Libra degree, is probably going to call us to have psychic awareness regarding maybe even our belief in fate. Fate versus the illusion of fate, because Rahu is also illusion. Um, Fated moves or fated separations of relationships, and then certain kind of fated relationships coming back. Venus is going to be in Aries, which is squaring Jupiter. So it's going to be big separations, but also big, I'm not saying reconciliations, but definitely big. Mercury's retrograde is going to be big in general, but we're going to be looking at those little things that make a big difference regarding what makes or breaks a relationship, the role of fate in breaking and making a relation or a separation. Um, and then this Lilith that is squaring the entire thing for the entire month. So it's kind of like a flavor of Me Too, but with Lilith being with Antares, and yet the adjacency to Fomalhaut squaring Antares is begging the question, do we actually see the full picture? And does the pilgrimage of Lilith actually, because she does win here, Lilith does have a win here, and Fomalhaut might be asking, not at what cause, in as much as the full psychic awareness to something. Lilith has a win, and you know what this could be like? It could be like somebody's having, I don't know, a win around um, Jupiter in Cancer. It's a new moon. It is a conjoining of something that is one, and Antares is not Aldebaran, which means this has very good chance to not be a Pyrrhus wing. And there's something very real, whether it's philosophy or religion or spirituality, that Lilith has a wing here. And this can be relational, and it can be that she actually has a relation or a new beginning that acknowledges Lilith. And yet that square could bring about um, it can even be that somebody wants to renew a contract to do with something to do with, I'm not saying the soul, but um, it can be soul contract, or somebody wants to renew a contract, and that stands in contradiction to the win of Lilith. Or is a tension between the win of Lilith and somebody's desire to renew because this can give Mercury ruling Ketu with Rahu can simply be renewed vows. Okay, and because Jupiter, okay, it's not Saturn, but Jupiter moon, some sort of relation with the moon, or somebody wants to have a renewed vow, or somebody's scheduled to have a renewed vows or renewed contract, and this is the point where Mercury turns from retrograde to direct, but the new moon is with the retrograde phase, and that is somehow in tension with the included acknowledgement of Lilith. So it can be, I don't know, a couple renewing the rent, but the owners are not in the same religious beliefs or something. Like, I'm not sure what does it mean or what does it stand for. But it seems like there is a desire or a fated scheduling to renew some sort of contract um, or belief, renewed faith. But this faith has a message. It's something to do with the word or technology or a contract. Um, it doesn't necessarily mean an oath here, but this is standing in contradiction to the win, to the very obvious win of Lilith in regarding spiritual sovereignty, gnosis, the role of Lilith in relationships, or even a home, or a home that is a sanctuary. So I'm wondering about this conflict. Like, what is the conflict? Um, because there is somebody that wants to renew something, and but I definitely see Lilith winning here. and that win is in tension with whatever that renewed contract is. And this sets the tone for the new beginning. New moon sextile Uranus. There are Saturn turns of events and ruled by Venus. Venus in Aries. Mars 12 degrees Pisces. So Mars is igniting the point of the solar eclipse, of the lunar eclipse. Okay, basically he moves through where the sun was in the lunar eclipse. And it can even be a couple that maybe have renewed vows, and maybe that stands to commitment or the renewing of the vows, or it was a renewing of, I don't know, continuing to live together. And then there is this Lilith win coming in where, or it can even be that, there's some sort of, because I don't necessarily see tradition. Bless you. Saturn is 3 degree Aries, Mars is ruling it. It can be traditional, something traditional, that can cause a separation because of the twin of Lilith, or that the twin of Lilith is countering a certain separation. I really don't know. And then human is sextiling Uranus. That can be revolutionary perspective on relationships and the sovereignty within the relationships, because Venus in Aries denotes that can we be ourselves in a relationship? Can we maintain our sense of self in a relationship? And is this relationship a union of two sovereigns? Now, this Venus is actually closer to the trine with Lilith. And so Venus reminds us that relationship is about two sovereigns coming into union, and they're supposed to remain sovereign within that union. Now this new moon has a new beginning, sextiling this Uranus with its ruler in agreement with Lilith. So there's some sort of fated renewal of the vows or fated renewal contract where it feels to me that people should be aware of the fact that Lilith won. Okay? Now, I don't quite understand what it means. What does it mean for Lilith to win here? Because Mars is closer to trining Jupiter. And so, in the best of cases, it can be a win-win-win. It can even mean that the certain settings or community settings that were causing a challenge have changed with the renewing of the vows. And even though the vows are in tension with Lilith, everything else is okay. But this can also mean that there's something not up to speed with this renewal of the vows because Lilith won. And I don't quite understand why. Um, and Mercury and Ra are closer to Fomalhaut, which is psychic awareness, awareness from the depth of the ocean. And this entire month is circumventing around that degree. So it's very difficult to tell what it is because we're going to have an eclipse there, which means we're going to be psychically aware of something in a very sudden way, and we're going to have a new moon that's going to be in the shade of that eclipse. So there are many things that can unfold. Um, and they all have to take into account that Lilith here wins. And when we talk about the Lilith win, we're talking about the gnosis. We're talking about that Mary Magdalene was not a whore. Okay? Lilith amounts to nothing if Mary Magdalene was a whore. Okay? So the Lilith winning, meaning Mary Magdalene wasn't a whore. And okay, Lilith basically was the wife of Adam that was equal and would not be subdued, and so she was in exile, and here the exiled woman wins because she would not subdue to violence. Okay, she basically said what comes with violence, what comes with domination, what comes with forced submission is not something that I can be with. And so she wins here, and this is either she wins in the sense that she gets a divorce, or there is an actual authentic union. But it seems to me because of this tension, or she's going to have to live alone, which means that they're going to have to accommodate for her living alone because she cannot be married, or they change the vows to allow the gnosis, which basically would entail that Mary Magdalene was Jesus' wife, and Jesus has a child, and then that child would need to be acknowledged. Um, Lilith winning here is definitely the understanding that the gnosis, okay, in terms of belief in sign of Sagittarius, the gnosis, which is Sophia, which is Mary Magdalene, which is the woman that was an equal to, whether it was an equal to Jesus, an equal to Adam, a woman guru equal to the man guru, that those women win. This is about relation, so it's given secure attachment. That this woman had a gnosis of secure attachment. Why? Because Jupiter is in Cancer, and Cancer is relation. It's also about birthing or being a mother or a caregiver. It can be to do with sovereign birth rather than controlled birth, even spiritual birth, and the moon in Pisces. And the moon in Pisces, at the end decan of Pisces, is a completion. And there's a sudden completion that doesn't go with the renewing of the vows or the renewing of the contract in this situation. Okay? Now, what is this gnosis of Fomalhaut? What is the wisdom of the deep here regarding Fomalhaut? Why is it in tension with the wind of Lilith? I don't know. Both of them are ruled by Jupiter. It can be seen as a creative tension. The psychic awareness might be regarding how something is perceived or received. How is the message received? Or psychic awareness regarding a message of the renewing of the vows, or psychic awareness that there was a fated renewing of the vows or renewing of a contract, and that's in contradiction to the fact that Lilith won. But everything stands for Lilith in the sense that Jupiter is trining Mars and Venus basically Venus squares Jupiter, but Venus here rules over Uranus that sextiles the new moon. And so we have a continuous tension. If there is a couple that renewed the vows, the tension will be continued because Lilith won. Okay? They could really love each other. Okay, even though Venus is in Aries, Jupiter is exalted in Cancer. Um, Moon in Pisces denotes very deep emotions, and Mercury in Pisces can also be even psychic connection. Um, but there's something about the fact that Lilith won that the psychic awareness of the renewing of the vows stands in contradiction with. Now, try to think about Fomalhaut and Antares. Fomalhaut is the psychic wisdom. Antares is an evident wing. And it's a wing that is psychic protection. So if Fomalhaut is the increased awareness and deep healing wisdom of the deep, Antares is coming in the form of a wing regarding the situation. So the tension can be between the visibility and the psychic awareness. Okay, because Fomalhaut um, is Pisces. Okay, it's still in the domain of Pisces. It's still in the domain of the all-encompassing truth. And Antares is not there yet for a reason. Something has to win the psychic protection before it can blend into Fomalhaut. So Fomalhaut might be more advanced than Lilith, but Lilith can't just be where Fomalhaut is. She still needs to win. Think about it. Mary Magdalene is the wife of Jesus that was birthing a child, a girl, to Jesus. But before people can acknowledge that, they first need to acknowledge that Mary Magdalene was not a whore, a cheat, a this, a that, but was the counterpart of Jesus. And only then can they acknowledge that this is the child of Jesus, that there is a girl that was the child of Jesus, that Jesus here is a girl, basically. Okay, and this is just, I'm giving just one example because Piscean is so close to Christianity and Lilith is in the sign of faith. So I'm thinking, what are the female deities or goddesses? And if we acknowledge the children of Lilith, the children of Lilith could even be seen associated with the myth of Isis and Osiris, and acknowledging that they are also divine children means honoring the sovereignty of Lilith. Lilith was the first woman who did not agree, who actually left an abusive partner. Okay? She actually left and she didn't give him another chance to harm her. And so she went missing, basically exposing the fact that the entire Bible does not include orgasmic birthing, consensual sex, that is willing consent, that is a tantric embodiment, that is having the voice of a woman and the voice of a man. Even in the Song of Songs, we have one voice. We don't have a continuum. And the entire eroticism is supposed to be dedicated to the god, but not amongst people. Okay, and so that which is missing causes people to go away from religion, and they see the faults of the God that they are told to believe in, whether it is the first deacon of Aquarius, which I addressed when we had a stellium in the first deacon of Aquarius. God causes chaos between two brothers, and then exiles both, allows one to be murdered, because if he's God, why didn't he stop? Why he stopped Abraham from sacrificing his son? Why not Cain from sacrificing Abel? And he caused that chaos to begin with. He didn't accept the grain, but he accepted animal blood sacrifice. And then and then he shamed and exiled, um, basically, the people from Eden. It all kind of looks like a landlord that's taking over land illegally and trying to justify itself. So, okay. And then we have Lilith. She was a whore. Eve, she had to birth with sorrow because she ate an apple. Uh, no, because she listened to the snake. Uh, they punished the snake. Uh-huh. She caused the fall from. What did she do? Had sex with. How were they supposed to procreate? So this one was an equal, and that one was seductress, and we don't actually have sex in the Bible. We have rape, and we have shaming gay sex. That could be gay rape. Like, it's not even clear. And so Lilith here is the fact that to acknowledge the children of Lilith, we need to acknowledge Lilith, or to acknowledge that Jesus continuer was, or here was a daughter. We need to see Mary Magdalene as a wife, as a spousey, or as the partner of Jesus. But her teaching were gnosis. not compatible with controlling humanity. Okay, so Lilith has to win first before we can re-include, let's say, before the daughter of Mary Magdalene can inherit Jesus, we need to acknowledge Mary Magdalene as the legal partner of Jesus. And what could be here is that it was already done. But it was done by renewing of the vows. And it can even be a situation where um, the psychic awareness um, was to acknowledge the child of Mary Magdalene, and but that stands in tension to the fact that that Mary Magdalene won in being acknowledged with her gnosis. Now, formality in itself is gnosis. And what I can see here, we may have an outward expression of the acknowledgement of Lilith or of the goddess of Gnosis or of Mary Magdalene, while we're going to have a Gnosis that is not the outward expression of a renewing of the vows. And that can be the tension between that which is, and even when I think about acknowledging Mary Magdalene externally, is acknowledging gnosis in an outward expression. And it's only where we discuss Mary Magdalene and saying, wait a second, she wasn't a whore. She had the gnosis. She had the internal reckoning of the divine within. And that is done outwardly, because outside she was seen later as a whore, as a castaway. And so there's something in tension with gnosis that called for acknowledging, just because they horrified Mary Magdalene, so she had to confess that she's not a whore. it's it's okay. If I think about, um, yeah, it's kind of like the situation was created where the goddess of inner gnosis, or the woman that represents inner gnosis, has to speak up, and she wins. But it's kind of like, it's kind of like no one is even supposed to say she's not a whore. Do you know what I mean? It's not because you can't speak about it, but because, first of all, it's supposed to be obvious, but because they saw the goddess, because they saw Mary Magdalene as a whore, she had to give her teachings, or she had to have an outward expression of her teaching, because something began to affect there in a way where, okay, there may have been a renew. Think about it. It's kind of like Mary Magdalene does a renewing of the vows with Jesus, and then um, around that time, people are like, "Yeah, Mary Magdalene is a whore. Is it this? Is it that?" And Jesus can kind of go and say, "Well, uh, that's the mother of my children. We recently remarried." Okay. And it's contradicting the internal expression of Mary Magdalene, which is gnosis, which is not about speaking out the teachings, but because everybody is, seeing her as something that is very weird, then Jupiter means the spouse, so it's kind of like her spouse. He has to come out and say, well, she is my wife. We just renewed the vows. She is the mother of my children. This woman that you call whore. And so in that way Lilith wins, but it is contradicting to her nature that she even had to say something outside where what she represents is going within. Okay, am I making myself like for Mary Magdalene to say or to have it be known that she's not a whore is actually an outward expression, because what Mary Magdalene is going within and acknowledging the divine within. It's not something that needs to be spoken outside, not because it's a secret, but because it is one's own connection that is independent of speaking out to another. It's not about lecturing or indoctrinating, but going within. So it is antithetical to the nature of someone that does that to even be in a position where she would have to defend herself. But then there is a calling for, because of the renewing of the vows, there's a sudden eureka, a sudden teaching, a sudden speaking up that is now, if there is, how should I say that? With Pluto is sextiling Saturn. It can even be with Venus here. Venus can be self-advocacy, but Mars is in Pisces. I don't know. Okay, but I think about some sort of such a situation. And this new moon is already the sextile with Uranus. Now, there can be something unusual about the union. Um, okay, Uranus here can denote at a union that is unusual. It can either be a divorce or a union that is unusual, and it can be strictly, um, either LGBTQ or hermaphrodite or um, something of that sort. Like, I don't know. Um, mm, 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 mm. This Lilith could be literally winning a home or at home or winning a new beginning. There's something sudden and unusual about that new beginning. Or because somebody divorces, she can take their home. Like, or some sort of unusual housing, because moon is housing, and this housing has a religious factor or completion of something around housing or around housing, children, birthing, something of that sort. I don't know. Interesting, interesting. Um, all the moves that are going to be made. And here's the thing, because Rahu is in this 8th degree, they're going to be fated moves, fated renewing of the contract, an actual eclipse, and anyway, Lilith wins. So, and it stands in contrast. It stands in tension. It's a creative tension. There is a tension, and this is why I think that this is the eclipse where people are going to either have masses of people going away from all religions, or having to face the fact that Mary Magdalene was not a whore, and that Lilith was not anything but a woman that kept her dignity in the face of basically an abusive husband. And it's not what this eclipse is about, but this is something that happens in the background that stands in contradiction with this eclipse. Because I think that this is a desire to have unity or one world religion, and this is where it's kind of like, well, if you're going to have a one world religion, you're going to have to acknowledge that the daughter of Jesus or that woman, when you say, why didn't you leave him? 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 Why did you have to stay with him? If you stay with him, you probably Lilith, Lilith, Lilith. Well, she left him. She didn't come back to him. I know that there is a 2025 agenda, although we are in 2026, to try to force people to marry, but this is exactly what's going to bring the Lilith wins. Okay, it's kind of like, oh, you have to marry someone. Well, they have to honor my sovereignty. They have to respect my dignity. They have to honor Lilith. They have to acknowledge Mary Magdalene was not a whore. They have to, housing has to support orgasmic birthing. Um, because they want to remove no fault divorce, and like, okay, if they want to remove no fault divorce, it means that there are many people are going to be guilty with things, which means that many women are going to actually complain. Like, what is he guilty of? Rape. What is he guilty of? Cheating. What is he guilty of? They're going to have to explain the fault. By the way, up until now, women could divorce their narcissistic husbands. Basically means husbands that grew away the death cult and were ritually abused and abusive because they grew into trauma bonding instead of relaxed arousal and secure attachment. And to divorce them, to separate from them, women could use no fault divorce. Now, what it's going to force women to do is basically to say, that person is a rapist. That person cannot give orgasmic birthing. That person deprives a woman of her ability to be feminine and relax into her feminine. That man is a cheat. That man is so on and so forth. And then when the women would have to prove certain things or prove certain things to do with the psychic things and so on and so forth, they're like, what do you want me to do? Poison my husband? What do you want me to do? Cast and so something is going to push to that eventually Lilith wins here. because the only happily married woman is the woman that's having orgasmic birthing, or orgasmic, willing, consensual sex that is actually authentically, willingly consensual. The woman that has her own sense of self in the relationship. The woman that is allowed to be spiritual, not in an indoctrinated form. Okay, Sagittarius is not indoctrinated. Um, the woman that is allowed to own her own house, and so on and so forth. That's not what those that want to create forced marriage situation necessarily want, but this is definitely what they bring. Because later there's kind of like, are they going to raid the Vatican? Are they going to burn synagogues and mosques and churches? They already burned churches in Netherlands when we had the triple conjunction in Capricorn. So we've seen that can be a real reality. They want women to start spelling out the names of, the offenders or the people. It's like, why don't you want to marry this man? He's affiliated with Epstein. The and then we're going to have Venus conjoining Chiron, which is another the almost annual conjunction of Venus and Chiron, which is on the 25th degree, conjoining Aries. And I kind of think that this is going to be the cloning wound regarding sexuality and genitals. Okay? And this is squaring the moon. And Lilith is 10 degrees Sagittarius. Again, still very close to Aldebaran. Again, we have the Lilith winds. Although Jupiter is applying to square, its 10-degree orb to square the Chiron Venus. Mars in Pisces, 19 degrees. Trining Jupiter, trining the moon. Mercury squares Lilith. Pluto, 5 degrees. Saturn in Aries. Strong Lilith themes. And Venus ruling over Uranus. Strong Lilith themes. Venus with Chiron. This is happening the 27th of March, in between eclipses. Venus Aries Chiron. Okay, basically anything that conjuncts Chiron is a triple conjunction. Um, and Venus here ruling over Uranus can be a divorce that exposes something, or because somebody feels disincluded. But this is actually Andromeda constellation, where the disincluded is re-included. But still we have this strong Lilith. And the way I would summarize Lilith in Sagittarius is either acknowledge Mary Magdalene was not a whore, or face the complete abolition of Christianity, for example. It's Sagittarius. Sagittarius has been through Scorpio. Okay, it's kind of like either give women rights or face the complete extermination of humanity. And the question of those things to do with Aries. Okay, and my prediction is that they are going to unfold. There's going to be an unexpected turn to the wound around, okay, whether it's LGBTQ or those who know more terms to that, ladies, gents, and hermaphrodites, then that's going to be at the topic of discussion with Mars in Pisces. And the moon will be trining Mars. Jupiter will be applying. Mars is separating from a trine to Jupiter. Mercury squaring Lilith. From Pisces again. Pisces has Zen-like thinking. Sagittarius is the one. Okay, think about one world religion they plan to do around 2030 when Ra would be in Sagittarius. Pisces holds something that's definitely global, but it's holding contradictions. Lilith doesn't have a holding. Lilith, it's not Lilith in Sagittarius reminds us that there is one truth. Either it's a trauma bond or it's a secure attachment. Either it's a love that's actually loving or it's a trauma bond. It's not both. And Pisces keeps trying to show Lilith the Zen-like, all-encompassing things, where Lilith is, wait a second, if I stayed with that, you would tell me, why didn't you leave? If I leave, you tell me, wait a second, we're all alchemy, we're all, okay? We're all one, we're all this, we're all that. Like, okay, to be one, we actually have to be equal. and not equal in being equally tortured, but in love that's actually loving. So it actually has to be zero rape, because otherwise we'll just be equal in how much we rape each other. rather than in how much we love or make love with each other. And here is the thing. Lilith stands in a point where if she doesn't, it's not about winning over, it's like if she doesn't win her sovereignty in the face of religion, spirituality, philosophy, and this is particularly of religion, of birthing, of housing, of mothering or caregiving, then basically all humanity is going extinct. And this is why Lilith wins here, because it's kind of like, well, if there are no eggs, we won't be having this type of procreation anymore as a species. If you try to control the eggs, they become less fertile or grow with anomalies that create not longevity, but actually decrease not only life satisfaction, but also life rate, which basically, or there are wars that create mass extinction of humanity. Think about the inbreeding versus the biodiversity. And let's think about kettles. When there are animal breedings that are breeding farms, the meat is causing cancer. The meat is infused with hormones that are basically causing cancer. So okay, the children that were born into those things, they basically are causing mass extinction. But this is true. That's what the policies are set to do, to cause a mass extinction or try to come for everybody's rights, which creates a global revolt. Now, this exceeding use of power basically collapses into itself.